Hej och välkommen tillbaka. Idag ska vi fortsätta läsa i tredje Mosebok. Kapitel 12 till och med hela kapitel 15. Jag har valt att slå ihop de här läsningarna. De här 2 veckorna kan man säga då. Så att vi kör båda 2 idag. Och de här Torah portion heter Tasria och Metsora. Och det kommer handla om renhetslagarna. Vad som gör oss orena och hur vi blir rena. Och sen även om Spetälska. Så ja, jag har valt att översätta de här till hon bär frukt och Spetälska. Så ja, vi hoppar in och börjar läsa tredje Mosebok kapitel 12. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a woman has conceived and born a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. She shall continue in the blood of her purification 33 days. She shall not touch any hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification are fulfilled. Så om vi stannar där lite. När en kvinna då föder en pojke så är hon oren i 7 dagar. Precis som hon är vid hennes månadsritual, vad ska man säga? Ni förstår. Och på 8:e dagen så ska då the foreskin shall be circumcised. Så på 8:e dagen så ska barnet, pojken, omskäras. Och vi har ju sett det tidigare i Abraham fick ju det här. Vi kan läsa om det. Genesis, första Mosebok, kapitel 17. When Abraham, här hade han inte fått sitt namn, Abraham. When Abraham was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am Almighty Elohim. Walk before me and be blameless. And I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly. Then Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. Petrus pratar om att vi är en helig nation, peculiar nation. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. Vi kan hoppa lite. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant. Ett evigt förbund. As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generation. This is my covenant, which you shall keep, between me and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised. And you shall circumcise in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of my covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generation. Så Abraham fick det här också. Och varför 8:e dagen? Det är lite intressant, och vetenskapen har hittat att på 8:e dagen så har du en peak, en max, en peak på vitamin K och det här protorbin. Och de här samspelar för att koagulera blodet. Så just på 8:e dagen så har du bästa tillfället egentligen. För blodet koagulerar då. Så det är intressant. But if she bears a female child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks. Alltså först var det 7 dagar. Men om hon föder en flicka så är hon oren i 2 veckor, 14 dagar. As in her customary impurity. And she shall continue in the blood of her purification 66 days. Så när man föder en pojke så är kvinnan oren i 7 dagar plus ska vi se om jag hittar det. Där. 7 dagar plus 33 dagar. Så 40 dagar. Men om det är en flicka så är hon oren i 2 veckor, 14 dagar plus 66 dagar. Vilket blir 80 dagar. Så dubbla dagar där. Vi fortsätter. When the days of her purification are fulfilled, whether for a son or a daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb of the first year as a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then he shall offer it before Yahweh, and make atonement for her, and she shall be clean from the flow of her blood. This is the law for her who has born a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she may bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as a burnt offering and the other as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for her, and she will be clean. Så några saker. Ett brännoffer, men också ett syndoffer. Och då kan man ju fundera, är det synd att föda ett barn? Och i första Mosebok, i skapelsen, så sägs det så här: To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Och om vi läser i Psalm 51. Och vi får se om jag tar med det här. Det här handlar ju om David då, när han och Batseba. När David syndar här. Så har han skrivit den här psalmen då. Och det jag vill belysa, han säger här: Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. Så vi ser att Bibeln beskriver det som en synd att föda barn. Vi ska ju göra det, men Varför beskrivs det som en synd? Det finns ju inget annat sätt att komma till världen då. Man kan ju prata om arvssynd, vilket den kan bli lite konstig, är det rätt ordval. Men man kan lätt tänka att vi kan inte göra någonting åt vårat läge, våran situation. Vi är syndiga, vi kommer fortsätta synda, det spelar ingen roll. Jesus, Jahusha, har ändå räddat oss och det är som det är liksom. Men den attityden blir konstig. Men man kan ju prata om, eller man kanske tänker sig att det kanske har med, vad ska man säga då, arvssynden som Adam och Eva där. En annan sak, om vi läser i Lukas 2. Här är när Jesus, Jahusha, efter han har fötts. And when 8 days were completed for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Yahusha, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Now when the days of her purification, Marias då, according to the law of Moses were completed, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to Yahweh, as it is written in the law of Yahweh. Every male who opens the womb shall be called holy to Yahweh, and to offer a sacrifice according to what is said in the law of Yahweh, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Så det tyder på att att de inte hade råd, om de var en fattig familj, eller för som vi läste, man skulle komma med ett lamm och en pigeon eller en duva då. Men hade man inte råd eller möjlighet så fick man komma med två fåglar, vilket hon gör här då. Och det här som vi läste här, as it is written in the law of the Lord, Yahweh, every male who opens the womb shall be called holy to Yahweh. Och det har vi läst i Andra Mosebok kapitel 13. The law of the firstborn. And it shall be when Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to your fathers, that you shall set apart to Yahweh all that opens the womb, that is every firstborn that comes from an animal which you have, the males shall be Yahwehs. But every firstborn, och så går det vidare. It shall be a sign on your hand, and as frontlets between your eyes. Så ett märke. Herrens märke. Faderns märke. Så vi hoppar vidare. Kapitel 13. Kapitel 13. Och innan vi börjar läsa det här så tänker jag, alltså det här handlar om spetälska, och det är ju ett hudproblem egentligen. Och man kanske tänker att men det här har vi inte idag. Det är väldigt ovanligt. Så liksom man kanske bara läser förbi det här. För det är ganska tydliga instruktioner för hur man ska behandla det. Men jag tänker att det här reflekterar ett hudproblem som egentligen reflekterar ett invärtes spirituellt tillstånd egentligen. Ett hjärtetillstånd egentligen som inte går att dölja utvärtes för alla andra att se. Och det händer när ordet konfronterar oss egentligen och gör anspråk på våra liv. Så kan man se vad finns det i hjärtat då egentligen? Vad är det som ploppar upp liksom. Så jag tänker att det här representerar det. Vi kan börja och läsa i 4 Mosebok kapitel 12. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. So they said, Has Yahweh indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And Yahweh heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. Suddenly Yahweh said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, Come out, you 3, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the 3 came out. Then Yahweh came down in a pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam. And they both went forward. And he said, Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. Alltså inte i liknelser, vad ska man säga. And he sees the form of Yahweh. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So the anger of Yahweh was aroused against them, and he departed. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. Then Aaron turned toward Miriam, and there she was, a leper. And Aaron said to Moses, O my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly, and in which we have sinned. Please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb. So Moses cried out to Yahweh, saying, Please heal her, O Elohim, I pray. Then Yahweh said to Moses, If her father had but spit in her face, would she not be shamed 7 days? Och det här kommer vi läsa om. Vad menar han här egentligen? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterward she may be received again. So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. Så här ser vi ett invärtes problem. De spoke, nu ska vi se hur de pratade ju bakom ryggen om Mose. De tyckte illa om honom. Och direkt här så får Miriam då den här Spetälska. Så vad som finns i hjärtat kommer ut. Och vi har flera sådana liknelser. Vi har en i Andra Konungaboken kapitel 5. Jag tänker inte läsa den är ganska lång. Men vi kan läsa i Andra Krönikeboken kapitel 26. Och det här handlar om Ussia som var kung i Juda. Now all the people of Judah took Ussia, who was 16 years old, and made him king instead of his father Amaziah. He built Elat and restored it to Judah after the king rested with his fathers. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became a king and reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechula of Jerusalem, and he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. He sought Elohim in the days of Zechariah, who had understanding in the visions of Elohim, and as long as he sought Yahweh, Elohim made him prosper. Now he went out and made war against the Philistines and broke down the wall of Gath, the wall of Jabneh, the wall of Ashdod, and he built cities around Ashdod and among the Philistines. Elohim helped him against the Philistines, against the Arabians who lived in Gurbal, and against the Meunites. Also the Amorites brought tribute to Uzziah. His fame spread as far as the entrance of Egypt, for he became exceedingly strong. And Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner's gate, at the valley gate, and at the corner buttress of the wall. Then he fortified them. Also he built towers in the desert, he dug many wells, for he had much livestock, both in lowlands and in the plains. He also had farmers and wine dressers in the mountain and in Carmel, for he loved the soil. Moreover, Uzziah and an army of fighting men who went out to war by companies according to the number of the roll as prepared by Jael the scribe and Maaseh the officer, under the hand of Hananiah, one of the king's captains. The total number of chief officers of the mighty men were valor was 200,600, and under their authority was an army of 307,500 that made war with mighty power to help the king against the enemy. Then Uzziah prepared for them, for the entire army, shields, spears, helmets, body armor, bows, slings to cast stone. And he made devices in Jerusalem invented by skillful men to be on the towers and the corners to shoot arrows and large stones. So his fame spread far and wide, for he was marvelously helped till he became strong. Så fadern hjälpte honom. Men sen då, but when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction. For he transgressed against Yahweh his Elohim by entering the temple of Yahweh to burn incense on the altar of incense. So Azariah the priest went in after him, and with him were 8 priests of Yahweh, valiant men, and they withstood King Uzziah, and said to him, It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to Yahweh, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Get out of the sanctuary, for you have trespassed. You shall have no honor from Yahweh Elohim. Then Uzziah became furious, så även efter att han blev tillrättavisad så blev han arg ändå. And he had a censer in his hand to burn incense, and while he was angry with the priest, leprosy broke out on his forehead, before the priests in the house of Yahweh, besides the incense altar. And Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked at him, and there on his forehead was leprous. So they thrust him out of the place. Indeed, he also hurried to get out, because Yahweh had struck him. King Uzziah was a leper until the day of his death. He dwelt in an isolated house, because he was a leper, for he was cut off from the house of Yahweh. Aj, aj, aj. Så här ser vi också ett exempel på hjärtats tillstånd egentligen. Och leprosy bryter ut. Och också det här att Yahweh had struck him. Som det står i Matteus 5. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black. Så när det händer, när det sker, så är det från Herren. Det är inte vi som kan styra det. Och vad vill jag säga med det? Alltså, jag tänker så här samtidigt att vi lär göra oss av med saker man har i hjärtat då. Jag tror att det är bra att blottgöra, visa, alltså för då får man en chans till rening, tänker jag. Istället för att man ska hålla på det. Och då, den onde har inget att kroka tag i om man kommer upp med det och visar det så att du kan bli tvättad ren. Så när det springer upp saker ur hjärtat för att ordet gör anspråk, så är det är någonting bra. Det är någonting från Herren. Ja, vi läser här. Dagens Spetälska. Andra Timoteusbrevet, kapitel 3. But know this, that in the last day perilous times will come, for men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of Elohim, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people turn away. For of this sort are those who creep into household and make captives of gullible women loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Och sanningen vet ju vi. Det är hans Torah, hans ord. Jehosha är ju ordet. Now as Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds, disapproved concerning the faith, but they will progress no further, for their folly will be manifest to all, as there also was. Så det kommer synas, det kommer uppenbaras, antingen i ord eller handlingar. Och Matteus 23, Jehosha pratar om fariseerna. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay the tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matter of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought have done, without leaving the other undone. Blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but the inside are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. For you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanness. Even so you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Och samma sak egentligen i Lukas 11. And he spoke, a certain Pharisee asked him to dine with him. So he went in and sat down to eat. When the Pharisee saw it, he marveled that he had not first washed before dinner. Then Yahweh said to him, now you Pharisees make the outward, eller Yahusha är väl det här. Now you Pharisees make the outside of the cup and dish clean, but your inward part is full of greed and wickedness. Foolish ones, did not he who made the outward make the inside also? But rather give alms of such things as you have, then indeed all things are clean to you. But woe to you Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and all manner of herbs, and pass by justice and the love of Elohim. These you ought to have done, without leaving the others undone. For you loved the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces. Så ett invärtes problem som visas på utsidan. Men vi läser igenom kapitel 13 som vi ska göra. Jag ville bara visa mer vad det här kan representera då. Det som vi kommer läsa nu. Att det inte bara är hur du liksom skrubbar bort sår. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron saying, when a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it becomes on the skin of his body like a leprous sore, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priest. The priest shall examine the sore of the skin of the body, and the hair on the sore has turned white, and the sore appears to be deeper than the skin of his body. It is a leprous sore. Then the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. But if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, the priest shall isolate the one who has the sore 7 days. And the priest shall examine him on the 7th day, and indeed if the sore appears to be as it was, and the sore has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall isolate him another 7 days. Then the priest shall examine him again on the 7th day. And indeed if the sore has faded, and the sore has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only a scab. And he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab should at all spread over the skin, after he has been seen by the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the priest again. And if the priest sees the scab has indeed spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. Och vi kommer se just det här 7 dagars väntetid då. Och jag tänker lite så här, om man kan jämföra det här med ett invärtes tillstånd då. En 7 dagars fasta. Eller ja, en 7 dagars fasta. Kanske kan hjälpa. When the leprous sore is on a person, then he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall examine him. And indeed, if the swelling of the skin is white, and has turned the hair white, and there is a spot of raw flesh in the swelling, it is an old leprosy on the skin of his body. The priest shall pronounce him unclean, and he shall isolate him. for he is unclean. And if leprosy breaks out all over the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of the one who has the sore, from his head to his foot, wherever the priest looks, then the priest shall consider, and indeed if the leprosy has covered all his body, he shall pronounce him clean who has the sore. It has all turned white, he is clean. But when raw flesh appears on him, he shall be unclean, and the priest shall examine the raw flesh, and pronounce him to be unclean. For the raw flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. Or if the raw flesh changes and turns again white, he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall examine him, and indeed, if the sore has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. Who has the sore? He is clean. If the body develops a boil in the skin, and it heals, and the place of the boil there comes a white swelling, or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be shown to the priest, and if the priest sees it, it indeed appears deeper than the skin, and its hair has turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous sore which has broken out of the boil. But if the priest examine it, and indeed there are no white hairs in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. And if it should at all spread over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous sore. But if the bright spot stays in one place, and has not spread, it is the scar of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if the body receives a burn or a skin on the skin by fire, and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the priest shall examine it, and indeed if the hair of the bright spot has turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin, it is leprosy broken out in the burn. Therefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean, it is a leprous sore. But if the priest examine it, and indeed there are no white hairs in the bright spot, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. And the priest shall examine him on the 7th day. If it has at all spread over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous sore. But if the bright spot stays in one place, and has not spread on the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn. The priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar from the burn. En annan sak jag kommer tänka på. And the priest shall examine him on the 7th day. Så hur de här dagarna infaller. Det skulle kunna infalla på en sabbat. Får prästen vara där då? Vi vet ju att Jehusha, han helar ju på sabbaten. Också för att visa att visa fler saker, men att det är tillåtet. Det är tillåtet att göra gott. Och det var det ju här då med egentligen. För det är ju det tillfället när han säger till fariseerna, tror jag det, att men ni omskär ju på sabbaten om det skulle infalla så för att följa. Så varför blir ni arga när jag helar hela kroppen på en sabbat? If a man or woman has a sore on the head or the beard, then the priest shall examine the sore, and indeed if it appears deeper than the skin, and there is in it thin yellow hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scaly leprosy of the head or beard. But if the priest examine the scaly sore, and indeed it does not appear deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall isolate the one who has the scale 7 days. Precis. And on the 7th day the priest shall examine the sore, and indeed if the scale has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the scale does not appear deeper than the skin, he shall shave himself, but the scale he shall not shave. And the priest shall isolate the one who has the scale another 7 days. On the 7th day the priest shall examine the scale, and indeed if the scale has not spread over the skin, and does not appear deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. He shall wash his clothes, and be clean. But if the scale should at all spread over the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him, and indeed if the scale has spread over the skin, the priest need not seek for yellow hair. He is unclean. But if the scale appears to be a standstill, and there is a black hair grown in it, the scale has healed. He is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. If a man or woman has bright spots in the skin of the body, specifically white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and indeed if the bright spots on the skin of the body are dull white, it is a white spot that grows on the skin, he is clean. As for the man whose hair has fallen from his head, he is bald, but he is clean. He whose hair has fallen from his forehead, he is bald on the forehead, but he is clean. And if there is on the bald head or bald forehead a reddish white sore, it is a leprosy breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. Then the priest shall examine him, and indeed if the swelling of the sore is reddish white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, as the appearance of leprosy on the skin of the body, he is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His sore is on his head. Now the leper on whom the sore is, his clothes shall be torn, and his head bare, and he shall cover his mustache, and cry, unclean, unclean. He shall be unclean all the days he has the sore. He shall be unclean. He is unclean, and he shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. Ja, vi fortsätter att läsa. Nu kommer det handla om kläderna för en spetälsk person då. Vi ska se, är det mycket? Ja. Vi läser. Also if a garment has a leprous plague in it, whether it is a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it is the warp or woof of linen or wool. Och det här är väl i sömmarna, tror jag. Whether in leather or in anything made of leather. And if the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment or in the leather, whether in the warp or in the woof or in anything made of leather, it is leprous plague, and shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine the plague and isolate that which has the plague 7 days. And he shall examine the plague on the 7th day. If the plague has spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, in the leather or in anything made of leather, the plague is an active leprosy. It is unclean. He shall therefore burn the garment in which is the plague, whether warp or woof, in wool or in linen or anything of leather, for it is an active leprosy. The garment shall be burned in the fire. But if the priest examine it, And indeed the plague has not spread in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything made of leather, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing in which is the plague, and he shall isolate it another 7 days. Then the priest shall examine the plague after it has been washed, and indeed if the plague has not changed its color, though the plague has not spread, it is unclean, and you shall burn it in the fire. It continues eating away, whether the damage is outside or inside. If the priest examines it, and indeed the plague has faded after washing it, then he shall tear it out of the garment, whether out of the warp, or out of the woof, or out of the leather. But if it appears again in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything made of leather, it is a spreading plague. You shall burn with fire that in which is the plague. And if you wash the garment, either warp or woof, or whatever is made of leather, if the plague has disappeared from it, then it shall be washed a second time and shall be clean. This is the law of the leprous plague in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or woof, or in anything made of leather, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean. Ja, som sagt, mycket detaljer hur man ska hantera just utslagen då på huden och på kläderna. Och vi ska fortsätta läsa här också. Kommer handla om när det gäller hus också. Och ja, jag försöker bara tänka liksom det här invärtes tillstånden i våra kroppar, våra tempel, kläder. Vi ska klä människor. Han säger det. När jag satt i fängelse så gav de mig mat och kläder. Och även stenar kommer vi läsa om. Ja, vi hoppar vidare kapitel 14. Kapitel 14. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall examine him, and indeed if the leprosy is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command the one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. Och ja, blod och rinnande vatten. Om vi kollar på Johannes 19, när Jehosha korsfäst, hänger på korset. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water came out. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood. Hängde han på cedar wood? Kanske. The cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop, and dip them in the living bird, and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird who was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose in the open field. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, and shall stay outside his tent 7 days. But on the 7th day he shall shave all the hair of his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, and all his hair shall be shaved off. He shall wash his clothes, and wash his body in water, and he shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe lamb of the first year without blemish, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean, and those things before Yahweh at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and offer it as a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. Then he shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering, in a holy place. For as a sin offering is the priest's, so is the trespass offering. It is most holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Och det här har vi läst om. Prästerna invigdes ju på det här sättet. Så det är intressant att se att den som blir renad här då, och är det Petrus som pratar om också att vi är kungar och präster också i hans rike. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. Then the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahweh. And the rest of the oil in his hand the priest shall put some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed. So the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh. Och tänk på vad Yahusha har gjort för oss. Och hur han är inför Fadern. Then the priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Afterward he shall kill the burnt offering, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. So the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. Och vi vet ju det att Jehushas blod är ju det som renar oss. Och vi ska frambära våra kroppar som ett levande offer. But if he is poor and cannot afford it, then he shall take 1 lamb, male lamb, as a trespass offering to be waved, to make atonement for him, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. One shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. He shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting before Yahweh. And the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. Then he shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. Then the priest shall sprinkle it with his right finger some of the oil that is on the left hand 7 times before Yahweh. And the priest shall pour some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is on the priest's hand, he shall put it on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahweh. Så upprepning egentligen, fast första biten här var annorlunda. Och här då. And he shall offer one of the turtle doves or a young pigeon, such as he can afford, such as he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, with the grain offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him, who is to be cleansed before Yahweh. This is the law for one who had a leprous sore, who cannot afford the usual cleansing. Så det fanns struktur och ordning när det här träder fram, när det uppenbarar sig och hur man hanterar det. And Yahweh spoke. Nu fortsätter vi läsa om när det handlar om hus. Och man kan ju tänka, det handlar om mögel liksom. Vi läser. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give you as a possession, and I put the leprous plague in a house in the land of your possession. Det kommer från Herren. And he who owns the house comes and tells the priest, saying, It seems to me that there is some plague in the house. Then the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes into it to examine the plague, that all that is in the house may not be made unclean. And afterward the priest shall go into examine the house. And he shall examine the plague, and indeed if the plague is on the wall of the house, with ingrained streaks, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day, and look, and indeed if the plague has spread on the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which is the plague. And they shall cast them into an unclean place outside the city, and he shall cause the house to be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and plaster the house. Och om vi tittar på jag ska bara kolla här. Ja. Jag missade den här förut. Vi kan läsa den då. Johannes 13. Yahusha said to him, He who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who would betray him. Therefore he said, You are not clean. Så Judas var inte ren. Också det här hjärtats tillstånd. Men om vi tittar på stenarna skulle plockas bort ur det här huset. Första Petrus 2. You also as living stones are being built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim through Yahusha HaMashiach. Så vi är en peculiar nation, en nation, en byggstenar, och Yahusha är hörnstenen i riket. Now if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house, after he has taken away the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look, and indeed if the plague has spread in the house, it is an active leprosy in the house, it is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones, its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall carry them outside the city to an unclean place. Moreover, he who goes into the house at all while it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house shall wash his clothes, and he who eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes in and examine it, and indeed the plague has not spread in the house, and after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And he shall take to cleanse the house 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. Och ja, nu har jag inte kvar den här. Psalm 51 pratar ju också David att rena mig med hyssop. Then he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and the running water, and the living bird, with the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet. Then he shall let the living bird loose outside the city in an open field, and make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for any leprous sore and scale, for the leprosy of a garment and of a house, for a swelling and a scab and a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. Och hur håller vi oss rena? Hans blod renar oss, Yahushas blod renar oss. Och vad säger Psalm 119? Blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law, the Torah of Yahweh. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with the whole heart. Så ett bra hjälpmedel för att hålla oss rena. Välsignade är de nedsmutsade. Välsignade är de rena, de som vandrar i Herrens lag. Kapitel 15. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean, and this shall be his uncleanness in regard to his discharge, whether his body runs with his discharge, or his body is stopped up by his discharge. It is his uncleanness. Every bed is unclean on which he who has the discharge lies, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. Or whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. He who sits on anything on which he who has the discharge Seth shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the body of him who has the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. If he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, och här har vi det här som vi läste med Miriam, och att men om någon hade spottat på henne som var oren, så hade ju hon också blivit oren. If he who has the discharge spit on him who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which he who has the discharge rides shall be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until evening. He who carries any of those things shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And whoever the one who has the discharge touches and has not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. The vessel of the earth that who has the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. Och vad rör det sig om för discharge? Jag har läst att det här kan handla om gonorré. Och sen, alltså, man hade inte samma som vi har idag med dusch och tamponger och alla hjälpmedel vi har idag. Och jag tänker också så här att allt han sitter på, vi vet ju inte då vad människor, vart de har suttit, om de är rena eller orena, och jag tror inte att man ska liksom, jag vågar inte röra i någon person så här. Jag tänker att det handlar om vad det här hamnar på. Om det hamnar på en stol, en sadel, en säng, kläder, alltså, så ska man inte ta på det området. Alltså inte göra något konstigt av det här, utan så här att man inte får peta på någon, för att utan kommer du i kontakt med det här, tvätta dig liksom. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water, then he shall be clean. En annan sak jag tänkte på också. Whoever the one who has the discharge touches and has not rinsed his hand in water. Fariseerna var ju noga med att man skulle tvätta händerna. Och också det här att de satte upp skyddsstängsel för att inte bryta Torah. Så då tvättar vi oss varenda gång liksom. Och då gör vi det här, då gör vi ett regelverk för att inte bryta regelverket. Och sen så sticker det iväg och så har man massor med regler och bud. Och så följer man inte de äldstes traditioner. Till slut. Och tanken var väl kanske bra, för att inte bryta mot det här, så satte man upp extra regelverk, men det, som sagt, det ledde till att man inte gjorde the way your matter, delvis, och sen att hjärtats tillstånd inte fanns där, tron fanns inte där. On the 8th day He shall take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before Yahweh to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and give them to the priest. Then the priest shall offer them, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh, because of his discharge. Jag tänker så här, hur aktiva är vi i våra offer egentligen för saker och ting. Vi är ju inte så noga när det kommer till såna här saker. Vi har ju vår överste präst nu. Hur är det applicerbart idag? Är det inte det? Allt är ju inte det. Templet finns inte. Prästskapet finns inte på samma sätt. Och Petrus, jag tror det är Petrus, i Hebreerbrevet pratar ju om prästskapet är ändrat. För att det måste ske så. Så ja, det går ju inte att följa, och jag tänker att man ska inte följa det ordagrant. Alltså vi måste ha ett tabernakel och ett prästerskap. Den överste prästen har vi ju, men så hur ser våra offer ut då? Vi ska läsa lite fler bibelord också. Vi kan fortsätta. If any man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his body in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment, and any leather on which there is semen, it shall be washed in water, and be unclean until evening. Also when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything that she lies on during her impurity shall be unclean. Also everything that she sits on shall be unclean. Whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches anything that she sits on shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Och jag tänker då att om man kommer i kontakt med blodet här liksom, på kläder och händerna, eller inte, oj, vi råkar snudda i varandras fötter i sängen här liksom. If anything is on her bed, or on anything on which she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. And if any man lies with her at all, so that her impurity is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. Och sen också det här att, vad innebär det då att vara oren? Vad är det man inte kunde göra? Man kunde inte träda fram i templet. Och vi har inte den möjligheten idag. Alltså det ser inte likadant ut. Så vad gör man med de här sakerna? Vi är ju templet, och ska vi inte komma inför Fadern? Ska vi inte be till honom när man är oren? Träda inför prästen? Jag vet inte. Jag har inte alla svar. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than the time of her customary impurity, or if it runs beyond her usual time of impurity, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean. Every bed on which she lies, all the days of her discharge shall be to her as the bed of her impurity. And whatever she sits on shall be unclean, as the uncleanness of her impurity. Whoever touches those things shall be unclean. He shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the priest shall offer the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before Yahweh for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is indisposed because of her customary impurity, and for one who has a discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with her, who is unclean. Så det var det vi skulle läsa. Men jag vill avsluta med några andra stycken här. Romarbrevet 12. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to Elohim, which is your reasonable service. 3 Mosebok 11. For I am Yahweh your Elohim, you shall therefore consecrate yourself, and you shall be holy, set apart, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourself with any creeping things that creeps on the earth. Orena er inte, utan var heliga, för han är helig. Och det här har vi läst också, 1 Petrus. You also are living stones and built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifice acceptable to Elohim through Yahusha HaMashiach. Och så fortsättningsvis. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim and praise of him who called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light. 1 Korint 6. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from Elohim? And you are not your own, for you were bought at a price. Therefore glorify Elohim in your body and in your spirit, which are Elohims. Kolosserbrevet 1. That you may walk worthy of Yahweh, fully pleasing him, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of Elohim. Och vara fruktsam. Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walked not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its seasons. Fruktsam. Whose leaves also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Ja, det var det vi skulle läsa idag. 2 veckors. Jag slog ihop dem till en läsning. Vi har gått igenom ganska mycket. Jag ville visa att Bibeln talar om att det som gör oss orena är det som finns i hjärtat. Men när vi läser om Spetälska här så är det ett utsides, en manifestation som kommer baserat på hjärtats, det inre tillståndet egentligen. Och där har vi flera stycken som visar både i, om man ska säga, Gamla testamentet och Nya. Jahusha tar upp det med fariseerna. Att det är det som är i hjärtat som gör er orena. Men det är inte sagt att det som är orent, yttre, om man då kan säga det, att det är liksom, det gäller inte längre. Jag tänker på mat och sånt som gör oss orena, som vi också har läst om nu då, att det man tar i och så vidare. Ja, det som sagt, men man kan ju fundera på vad innebär det att vara oren? Är det hur kan vi praktisera det idag liksom? Vad innebär det praktiskt att bli oren då? Att röra vid någonting? Vad är det vi inte kan göra då? Så ja, jag har velat försöka att visa på flera sidor egentligen, för att knyta ihop det. Så jag hoppas någonting har varit till välsignelse och att ni har lärt er något mer, sett något mer. Också sett kopplingen mellan nya och gamla. Det är inte 2 olika saker. Ja. Jag stannar där, så ses vi om 2 veckor. Så får vi se om jag ska göra någon annan video här emellan. På något tema kanske. Vi får se. Men vi säger så för nu. Så shalom.